So here's a sampler I like to call the Underground Effects. The Underground Effects were taken from the Oklahoma City Underground. It's this kind of strange warren of tunnels that are underneath downtown Oklahoma City, and a lot of longtime residents of Oklahoma City don't even know about these tunnels, but they've been renovated in recent years. They have all these crazy neon lights, piped in audio. A lot of downtown workers use them. And even though there's a lot of artistic renewal, both in downtown Oklahoma City as a whole and in these tunnels, there's still some really grimy, strange, weird spots underneath these tunnels. It was a rainy day, stormy day whenever we went down there to take samples, and so it made it extra creepy and strange. And I tried to gather samples from touching different materials, interacting with different materials downtown in those tunnels. Some things dated from the 60s and seemingly before that, and things that have been updated even since then. All the noises and the walking and the talking, the weather on the TV and the music that's piping down in the tunnels, and all the ambience around, to capture those, to put those into this sampler. So the sampler itself is composed of 4 main sections as it's laid out on Ableton Push, although the sampler can be used for any MIDI controller and any device that can generate MIDI notes. It just happens to work really well with Push's layout with all 64 pads active. On the green pads, I've got in the main section of textural samples, things that are a little bit more long and creepy and strange. On the red upper left corner, I've got more slightly pitched samples, but especially the samples that interact with the human voice. So there are heavily filtered and detuned and repitched and warped voices and songs and music that actually compose these strange textures up here on the red pads. On the lower left, the kind of violet pads that I've got, those are most of the percussive sounds. They consist of everything from elevator doors closing to the knocking of tubes protecting fluorescent lights, to hitting grates and scraping grates along the wall, pounding the sides of some of these tunnels with these really long decays, all manner of strange sound, including a heavily detuned elevator ding that turns into this forlorn, kind of strange, moaning, crying out sound. And then on the top right, I've got a bunch of sounds that are used with granular synthesis to create low drones. The pitches aren't super well defined, and so befitting something creating a creepy, dark soundscape, there's not so much these pitch elements as much as they are drones, by using tiny portions of bits of all of the samples spread throughout the overall drum machine or overall sampler itself. Now on each of these sounds, some of the examples of the sources of these sounds, looking at the first set of sounds on the more textural things, we've got some steam generation from a steam turbine that powers actually a lot of downtown Oklahoma City leaking into the underground. The sounds of people walking through the halls and interacting with elevators, slamming doors, have been changed with pitches and resonant effects behind them. The walking sound, actually the jangle of my keys on my belts, pitched down quite a bit. A really low-pitched HVAC effect from one of the air conditioners in the tunnel. A pump that was cleaning up water that had flooded the underground. Drops from water falling into the underground tunnels. And HVAC that I walked by and heard a strange phase interaction in this very long tunnel. Some scraping of the walls, coughing and doors shutting, elevators, more grates, elevator pitch drop. And some of these are set for looping, some of these are set to be single sounds. And you even have the nice steady rhythm of an escalator here that can create these small micro rhythms underneath everything else in your sampler. Moving up to the next layer here, I've got some weather reports that were being piped down into the tunnels. And this one is particularly fun, where the sample is scanned with an automatic LFO to pick up different parts of the announcer's voice. Feeling somewhat human, but not totally human, and the music in the background only adds to the creepiness of it. Most of these are built off of this weather report, by focusing on different portions of it, and then resonating a few of these with some resonant filters to create some slightly tonal effects. And some of these even venture into quasi-Foley territory there. Moving up to the next set of samples, just to get ourselves familiar with this. These are all my one-shot samples. Everything from doors, tapping on the walls of the tunnels, smacking on these metal grates on the sides of tunnels, an ancient thermostat that was long disconnected, made for a great percussive hit. The fluorescent tubes again, snapping on the sides of the walls, tapping on glass for some nice resonant pitched effects, elevator beeps, elevator doors, different squeaks and sounds that came even from the elevator that would take you to the underground. So before you even get down there, it's ready to creep you out. And then the final set will lead us into working with some of the effects for our sampler down here. So the final set begins with footsteps in the elevator that I've taken and created some small granular motions and movement by repeating tiny bits of the audio waveform to get some low drones coming out of this. Each of these vary in texture, frequency response, and pitch. Same thing for the fluorescent tubes, which use the same knocked around fluorescent plastic tubing that covers fluorescent lights, but in a way that sounds, of course, nothing like them. Maybe even like creatures a bit. And we have the door, again, sweeping frequency ranges around for kind of some reedy pitched elements like that. And then in this sample particularly, using a FM oscillator alongside the sample itself to create frequency modulation against the sample itself. Then this top row of sounds are all built out of hitting a grate, but they're built in with these resonators here. And so these have some resonant filters on the side that when the resonance is high enough, you get some nice droning coming from all four resonators. Now we control these effects with the macros on the drum rack right here. These macros also map to the top of push automatically and to many MIDI controllers. Once I've activated the resonance here, these filters are so resonant that they're self-oscillating. And I can adjust the pitch of those oscillators, which are just slightly offset one another, for some really strange pitch interactions and movements and detuning effects. So this can be a drone that goes over the entire composition. I also have this bad wind effect, and this is a frequency shifter that will work on my entire kit to create this dark, strange wind effect over the entire sample. I like calling these things interesting names like bad wind. The pebbles effect is a heavily compressed pitch detuning that is also set through a resonator to give it some pitch elements. At its highest setting, you can hear the pebbles really take over here. The moist fork is a convolution reverb. It has a metallic ring to it. So the impulse response used for this convolution reverb gives you a nice droning ring. And of course, any of these effects can work in combination with the others. The Pantone effect is based on a harmonic filter that creates small harmonic motion alongside the dry effects themselves, almost watery in its effect. Canyons is a very deep echo and reverb with a lot of modulation on it. Works really well with moist fork, adding the metallic resonance. And then finally, there's the metal body, a resonating model. It gives you a nice droning pitch struck on a metal beam. So even the percussive sounds that don't have a lot of pitch elements to them can get some really interesting resonance. And again, these effects can be combined and modulated in real time or with automation to expand the range of each of these textures to cover both a lot of space or to dry up if things need to feel very intimate inside of a trailer or in sound design itself. So I hope you enjoy the underground effects, all drawn from underneath the ground in downtown Oklahoma City, and enjoy making some strange noises with this.